Normally I do these videos by going out into a fairly dark place where there's a good horizon and showing you the whole of the sky, starting with one part of the sky and then going around. But because of lockdown, I'm not going to go out of the garden, stay at home is the instruction, so I'm going to show you some of the stars rather than the whole sky this time, and show you also what they look like through binoculars. So if you've got binoculars, then do get them out there and have a look. This won't take long, so you won't have to get very cold, but do wrap up anyway. If you look to the south, fairly high up, you'll see a very bright object, which is the planet Mars, and you can tell it's Mars because it's got a slightly reddish colour as well, and it's about the only object in that part of the sky which is that bright, so really you shouldn't be able to miss it. And above it is the constellation of Aries, 3 stars, 2 brighter and 1 fainter, and they're fairly distinctive. Now what I want to draw your attention to is if you look through binoculars, then you can see some other stars as well around Mars, and one of those is rather interesting. I'm recording this in the middle of January on the 15th, and Mars is actually moving fairly fast through the sky night by night, and so I'm going to show you a graphic of how it moves. But at the moment you can see, if you look through binoculars, 2 stars to the left of Mars, and Mars is going to be moving night by night between those 2 stars, and one of them is not actually a star, it's the planet Uranus. So you can find the planet Uranus, which is actually just one out of many fairly faint stars in the sky, but at the moment, because Mars is so close to it and is moving past it, you can find it quite easily. It gets its closest on about the 20th, so for the next couple of weeks it should be visible, and if you want to find it, then it's not too difficult even at other times, because it's in a fairly easily found part of the sky. So looking through binoculars, you can see those 2 stars there, and the lower one of the 2 is actually Uranus, and as I say, Mars will be passing between those 2 over the next few nights. Now I'm going to move the camera over to the left a bit, and there's a very distinct part of the sky there. You can see right in the middle now a little group of stars which is very distinctive. It is one of the best known parts of the sky, really. It's the cluster called the Pleiades, or the 7 Sisters, and it's actually in the constellation of Taurus, and the star below that you can see there is called Aldebaran. It's that V shape of stars there is called the Hyades cluster, and it marks the head of the bull, Taurus the bull. And the other stars of Taurus aren't particularly visible at the moment, so the view I'm getting here on the outskirts of High Wycombe is probably similar to that which a lot of you would be able to get. But let's look at the Pleiades in more detail. If you can get a pair of binoculars, have a look. With the naked eye, well, my eyes aren't all that good. I'm getting old and I can only see about 4 or 5 fairly well, but I know if you're young you might be able to see quite a lot more, and in darker skies than I've got here, so you might be able to see 6 or 7 or maybe 8. But look through binoculars and you'll see plenty more. It really is a fascinating sight, and you probably would lose count if you tried to count them through binoculars. And the view you can see here, as with binoculars, in fact I put a different lens on the camera, which is pretty well about the same as the field of view of typical binoculars, and you can see plenty more there. Looking down at the bottom where I said the star Aldebaran and the Hyades was, you can see that V shape. That is actually another cluster of stars which is a bit closer than the Pleiades. The Pleiades, I think, is about 425 light years away, if that means anything to you. It's comparatively close compared with some of the other objects we can see in the sky. But the Hyades there are about half that distance, and they are a more spread out cluster of stars and not as bright as the Pleiades. But all stars tend to be born in clusters, and these are just a pair of clusters which are comparatively close by and easy to see. Now I'm going to move the camera down a bit, and we can see a very characteristic pattern of stars which a lot of people recognise, and that is the constellation of Orion. probably the best known constellation in the sky after the Plough or the Big Dipper. And actually I'm going to move to one side so that we can see the bottom star of, there we go, just about got the whole lot in there. The pattern of Orion there with the 4 stars making the quadrilateral and the 3 stars in the middle, which as you can see are very convenient because they point upwards to Aldebaran and then to the Pleiades, so they're a good guide to the sky. And were it to be later in the evening or had a lower horizon, they would point down to that star I mentioned earlier, Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, in the night sky. The brightest star in the sky, of course, is the sun, but the night sky, it's Sirius. One particularly bright star, just going behind that tree there, over to the right of the group, is Rigel, and you can see compared with Mars it's a very bluish colour, bluish white, as indeed are most of the stars in Orion, except for the top left star, which is Betelgeuse, which is a more reddish in colour. And if you compare that with Aldebaran, and which is at the top of the field of view there, and indeed with Mars, you see that these stars are actually indeed quite red. They're both red giant stars, apart from Mars, which of course is a red planet. And if you think that all stars are white, compare those stars in the sky and you'll see that they are different colours. I'll go down to the belt of Orion, because now if you want to find the famous Orion Nebula, you can probably see it there in the field of view. It's a bit easier to see in the camera view than it is with the naked eye, but if you put binoculars on the 3 stars and then move down in the quadrilateral a bit, as we've done here, then you'll see a misty patch, which is the Orion Nebula. And I'm going to increase the exposure here. You can see maybe that the middle star of the 3 just below the belt there is the 3 bright stars of the belt. It's actually slightly misty, but it comes out better in the binoculars. The Orion Nebula is a birthplace of stars. If we look at it in a photograph, you'll see that there are stars all around. Don't expect to see a new star pop out just like that. The stars take millions of years to form out of the gas, but you can see the gas cloud of the Orion Nebula that stars form from. And there are probably many more stars inside that gas cloud which we just can't see, and eventually the stellar wind, as we call it, will drive away all the gas, and we'll see a new cluster of stars where the Orion Nebula now is. It's actually about 1,500 light years away. So a lot of the stars are between 1,000 and 1,500 light years away in Orion, so it won't be as brilliant as the Pleiades appear to us, because they're about 425 light years away. But that gives you a sort of scale of the stars that we're looking at. The stars of Orion are actually very bright stars indeed, and we can see them over a distance of 1,500 light years. Most of the stars we see in the sky are very much closer than that, and the stars in our comparatively close part of the neighbourhood, they're our neighbourhood stars, whereas the stars of Orion are real searchlights of stars, and we can see them over a much greater distance. Most of the stars we can see are comparatively close, within 100 light years. Now I'm going to move position again, and we'll just look to the left of Orion. So I'm going to stop the camera now. Here we go. Now you can see Orion is partly hidden by a tree there. But now if we move over to the left yet again, we come to a pair of stars, and these are the stars Castor and Pollux in the constellation of Gemini. You can see they're a pair of stars. They're not quite equal in brightness, but near enough, I suppose. And those are also known as the heavenly twins. And the 2 actual twins in mythology are Castor and Pollux, but they give their name to the 2 stars. And there are 2 rough lines of stars which are going more or less horizontal at the moment, which show up the pattern of the twins. So those are the heavenly twins, Castor and Pollux. Now before the sky gets completely cloudy, I'm just going to pan up a bit and look at another constellation which is a typical constellation of the winter, and that is Auriga, and it forms a sort of pentagon in the sky with this brightest star Capella at the top there, being hidden a bit by cloud at the moment, so I'm going to have to stop fairly soon. It's a sort of yellowish star. It's a yellow giant star, and you can definitely see the colour there if you look in binoculars, compare one after the other, Capella with Aldebaran, Betelgeuse and Rigel, and when it gets up, Sirius, and you'll see a definite change in colour. So that's a few of the stars of the January sky for you. Do have a look and wrap up well. I'm going to go in now because it's getting frosty and cold and it's starting to cloud over. But I hope you enjoy looking at the stars.